Hey everybody, Flash Meteorologist Dave Downey here. We are 11 days away from Halloween, and yet hurricane season is not going over. Are we going to get trick-or-treated this year for what would be the last month of hurricane season? It runs through November 30th. There is an area that the Hurricane Center is watching really closely. You see it over my right shoulder right now. Big area of showers and thunderstorms in the Caribbean Sea. The Hurricane Center giving this a 90% chance of formation over the next week and a 70% chance in the next 2 days. So we're filming this Monday afternoon, a very good chance of this becoming the next named storm, and that would be Melissa. And then, of course, the question would be, where would Melissa go from here in what is sometimes the Caribbean graveyard? The trade winds move so fast in this portion of the Caribbean Sea, shuttling these areas of showers and thunderstorms from the east to the west, right just north of the ABC Islands. There's Aruba right there. There's the rest of the ABC Island chain as they move the satellite a little bit on us. Really hard to make out a low-level center of what, again, would be Melissa, but a big time batch of showers and thunderstorms extending from basically the edge of South America all the way almost up to, there's Puerto Rico. They like changing the satellite image on us. This image, courtesy of our friends at Cyclonic Weather. Alex, good partner of ours this year, cyclonicwx.com. He runs a great website here. We're using him for our satellite radar footage or satellite footage and some model data as well. Anyways, you can see this system kind of speaks for itself. This is a big system, the Central and Eastern Caribbean. So that's why the Hurricane Center is optimistic on this becoming Melissa as soon as Wednesday. Let's show you what Flashcast has. I fast forwarded this to Wednesday afternoon. Here's Wednesday at 2 p.m. This isn't going to happen this fast. At this point, Flashcast already has a low-level center, almost an eye trying to peek out here. There are 3 plausible scenarios of what's going to happen with Melissa. The first one is what our 10-day future radar thinks could happen here, is that it stalls out just south of Haiti. There's Haiti right there. There's the Dominican Republic, of course, to the east there on Hispaniola. And then by Thursday morning, Melissa, this would be Hurricane Melissa at this point, starts pivoting northeastward towards Haiti, towards the Dominican Republic, and eventually making a landfall, causing major flooding, major storm surge on the island of Hispaniola on Thursday. This is in 3 days, so this is less than 72 hours out. We're talking about potential hurricane impacts in the Caribbean. But this scenario is not locked into fact, primarily because of those trade winds I talked about earlier. Those winds are going to keep trying to steer what will be Melissa off to the west. I'll keep our 10-day future radar out Friday, Saturday. By this point, as soon as it gets north of the Dominican and northeast of the Turks and Caicos, it's out to sea. It's moving away from the U.S. It's nobody's concern. As I mentioned, that's just one of 3 possible outcomes, each of them likely about the same likelihood. This one's about a 40% chance. The other 40% chance is what the European model thinks could happen here. And that is, I started this a little too far in advance, it keeps the trade winds shuttling Melissa off a little bit further to the west. Let's zoom in on the Caribbean here. This is a 992 millibar, Category 1 likely hurricane by this coming Saturday morning. But it gets a little further west. It kind of hangs out just south of Jamaica. There's Jamaica right there. Here is Cuba. And there's, of course, Florida and the rest of the United States. The European model has Melissa just hanging out here in the Caribbean. The water exceptionally warm. Even if a hurricane were to stay stalled over the same area for a couple of days, in not very warm waters, that can cause the hurricane to eventually weaken due to upwelling, the hurricane pulling cooler water from below the surface. But there has not been a single storm in the Caribbean this year, and that means there's a whole lot of fuel in the Caribbean for any potential storm to take advantage of. And the afternoon model of the Euro here on Monday turns this into a major hurricane striking Jamaica and then eastern Cuba, portions of the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos by next Thursday. So we're talking about an 8-day difference between when our 10-day future radar has what would be Melissa hitting Hispaniola and the European model hitting not far west, a couple hundred miles further west. It's all a matter of when Melissa gets organized, likely becomes a hurricane. The question is going to be what category, how strong does Melissa get? And then when does it feel a steering influence from a trough that's going to be moving across the U.S. either this week or next week? So that's scenario number 2. The 12Z, the afternoon European model ensemble, actually illustrates the 3 different scenarios very well. Here's the spread on Friday afternoon this week. So there are a couple different ensemble members. Ensemble is a good way to view this probabilistically. What's the chance of hurricane hitting X? What's the chance of Melissa going this way, that way, etc.? A good way of assessing the kind of uncertainty and the confidence level regarding a certain storm, especially during hurricane season. So you can see we've got some members off to the northeast here, I've already outlined, but the bulk of the members are off to the southwest, continuing that jog westward through the Caribbean, which does seem more likely at this point because, again, Melissa is not really, it doesn't have its act together in the Caribbean right now. If it was a tropical storm already, we would be sounding the alarm bells for potential hurricane impacts in the Dominican and Haiti as soon as Wednesday or Thursday. But it's got to get its act together, so that means there's a better chance of it getting further west in the Caribbean, strengthening, likely becoming a major hurricane by this weekend. This is Saturday night into Sunday. You see lots of deep blues in here. There's a 942. That's a major hurricane right there. So the further west it gets, the longer time it gets over the Caribbean. By this point, you start to see some green showing up here over America. This is the next cold front, the next trough that's pushing eastward across the country. And at that point, by this time next week, next Tuesday or Wednesday, then future Melissa will feel the northeastern pull of that trough. And then at that point, Melissa gets turned northeast. You can see this is a much more likely solution here. Is by middle of next week, Melissa, likely a major hurricane, striking Cuba, striking the Bahamas. And you can't even take the southeastern quarter of Florida out of the equation either, just because of how close of a game you're playing here with a storm going from the Caribbean and taking that northeastward turn. This is not too dissimilar to what Hurricane Wilma did when it hit Miami back in 2005. I'm not saying Melissa is going to be Wilma, but this time of the year, that is always a possibility with a storm moving from the Caribbean off to the northeast. So we've got lots of different land masses in play here from, as we said, Haiti, the Dominican, even Puerto Rico, but more likely Cuba, the Turks and Caicos, Jamaica, maybe the Cayman Islands, and maybe even southwestern or southeastern and potentially southwestern Florida as well. This hurricane season, by and large, has been relatively unimpactful. We had Chantal here in North Carolina back in July, but that has been the only tropical system to make landfall. It was a tropical storm back in early to mid-July. Could the 2025 hurricane season go out on a bit of a bang with Melissa here in the next week to 10 days? It's certainly possible, and it's something we're going to keep a close eye on here at Flash. Flash, the leaders, the pioneers of the next generation of severe weather and soon tropical cyclone forecasting. Stay tuned for the latest updates on what will become Melissa.